Hello, my name is Erin. I am Queen Bee Tarot. Thank you so much for joining me today. What I've got for you today is part 2 of my video series, How to Access Your Intuition and How to Talk to Your Spirit Guides. If you haven't watched part 1 video yet, please go do that because there's a lot of really good information in there. I will make sure to include the link to that video down below in the description box. Just to recap, what we talked about in our first video was stay curious and practice noticing. Those were the biggest themes. The reason that we stay curious and practice noticing is because what I wanted to do is help you get on the same page as your brain. Everybody's brain works differently. The other thing that I was focusing on in the first video is that if your brain isn't working in a healthy or productive manner, the other highlight of that video was how important mental health is. I know that in my life, when I have gone through periods of extreme stress, of grief, of depression, it's been nearly impossible, if not totally impossible, to be able to hear my spirit guides or tap into my intuition. And the reason for that was because my brain was too full of yucky stuff. A lot of that is totally out of our hands. So it's really important to just manage your stress the best you can. Get help for mental health issues if there's anything coming up for you, and be gentle with yourself. Love yourself, because our brains really can't do more than what they're capable of. We want to support and nourish our brains and be extra kind and gentle. So if your brain is in a good place and you're ready to start practicing, the reason that I say stay curious and practice noticing is because, like I said, everybody's brains work a little bit differently, and everybody receives their intuitive gifts in a different form. One of the biggest ways that I got in my own way when I was learning to tap into my intuition was expecting my intuition to come in the same form and present itself in the same way that I observed other people talking about their intuition. If you've ever heard of the clairs, C-L-A-I-R, it is a prefix that represents or means clarity. So if you've heard of the term clairvoyant, that means seeing clearly. If you've heard of the term clairaudient, that means hearing clearly. Claircognizant means knowing clearly. And the reason I bring up the clairs is because everybody's brain has a different way of channeling gifts. So sometimes when I do readings for people and I'm focusing on my client, what I see inside of my head are bubbles of color. It may sound weird, but what my guides are doing is that they're showing me the aura of the person that I'm reading for. And so by seeing those colors, I can get a pretty good understanding of what they're going through and what their base energy vibrates at. The other thing that I often see is a movie playing inside of my head when I'm thinking of a question or tapping into a client for a reading. I'll get a movie playing inside of my head. I will get visual imagery that shows me either the answer to their question or details about what's going on for them. The other things that I experience are just this sense of knowing things, just knowing what somebody's going through, or knowing the answer to their question, or the answer to a question that I have. And so personally, I had to recognize that my gifts come in various forms that can be quite different from day to day or hour to hour. So staying curious and practice noticing means that I'm staying open to any form in which my spirit guides or my angels are trying to talk to me, so that I'm not sitting there with blinders on going, nope, it's only supposed to be one form. Nope, that's not it. It's supposed to come through in this one particular way. We don't want to shut the doors to our intuition by having our expectations of ourselves or our brains be unreasonable. I had a viewer actually approach me after the first video, and she said, you know what, Erin, I really don't think I have an intuition, but I do have really vivid dreams, and often they predict the future. And I said, look, that's your intuition. That means that your gifts come through in your dream state. And that's okay. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our expectations of ourselves and our brains are reasonable and appropriate based on what we personally are capable of. So those were my biggest points from the first video, and if you've practiced noticing and if you stayed curious, hopefully you're starting to notice little ways in which intuition comes into your awareness. The other thing that I was talking about in the first video was how you will have approximately 3 main voices or forms of dialogue within your head. One of those is the ego that kind of narrates our day-to-day life. One of those is the id, which sometimes says yucky things about us, like, oh, you're such a loser, oh, you screwed that up. That's the yucky voice. And then the other voice that we have is the super ego, which is our higher self. It only says calm, positive things, and it answers really, really quickly. Never says yucky stuff. So I have a question for you. When you are observing those 3 voices, who's the observer? That'll get you thinking for a little while. The other thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we set space on a daily basis to be able to receive those downloads and receive that information. You can go out into the forest if you have lovely nature around you. If you don't have nature around you, that's okay. Meditating is really, really helpful. Some people like to meditate in the morning. Some people like to meditate before bed. Again, it's all about what works easily with you and your routine and your brain. The other thing I wanted to add is that the use of drugs or alcohol will impair your ability to connect with your guides. So making sure that you're eating well, sleeping well, reducing stress, and again, holding that space. What's also really important is that you mind any negative self-talk. I know that times that I have doubted myself or I talk yucky about myself, boom, my intuition cuts off and I have a really hard time accessing it until I set that calm and peaceful, loving space for myself again. The other thing I wanted to point out is as you've been tuning in to whatever's happening inside of your head, maybe you're starting to notice that, for example, the ego talks with your entire brain. It fills up your awareness and it feels like it's just right here. Sometimes the id, the yucky voice, will come from a different part of your brain. And then your higher self, the super ego, is going to come from another part of your brain. There will be differences in which part of your brain you feel it from. There's going to be differences in the tonation, the energy, the quickness of how it talks, if it talks like with an angry voice or with a really peaceful and calm voice. So the more that you practice noticing and the more that you stay curious, hopefully you'll start noticing some of these intricate details and you'll be able to piece apart which little piece of inner dialogue is happening. And again, maybe contemplate the observer. Who is the observer? We're going to talk about that in the next video. So I hope I've given you a lot to think about, and I hope that I've given you a lot to practice. I would strongly encourage that you start a journal of your intuition. Whether you're writing down dreams, whether you're writing down colors and sensations, maybe you're experiencing movies playing inside of your head. We're going to focus on the clairs, and maybe you'll notice which clair, or maybe multiple ones, you've got. Clairvoyant is clearly seeing. That's when you have imagery or maybe even movies playing in your head. Sometimes I see colors. The other one is claircognizant, where you just kind of know things without anybody telling you. Clairaudient is when you actually hear voices. Sometimes when I'm doing medium work and I'm tuning into spirits that have passed on, I actually hear them in their voice. But when I'm talking to my higher self or my angels, it's my voice inside of my head. So stay curious, practice noticing, set the space to be able to receive downloads, and don't give up. Be kind with yourself, be compassionate and gentle and loving with yourself. Learn how your brain works and learn how to work with your brain instead of fighting against it. All my love, mwah! I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.